Usually when I prepare a sermon, I spend a lot of time and thought trying to connect the gospel text with our life today. What is God trying to tell us through the gospel story and through the biblical text on this particular time and this particular place? Our reading from the Gospel of Matthew today is the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And when I read the text, blessed are the poor in spirit, immediately what came to my mind was that picture of 5-year-old Liam Ramos, little boy with a blue bunny hat and a Spider-Man backpack, being held by an ICE agent while his father was being detained. They were taken away to a detention center, and when their congressional representatives came to visit them, Liam's father told him that the little boy was sleeping most of the time and was not well. He was not eating well, and he was sick. You know, he'd been taken away from his home and from his mother, from his school and his friends, from his normal routine, and he was depressed. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Right there. And when I read, blessed are those who mourn, what immediately came to my mind was Kathy and Michael Preddy, who were mourning the death of their son, Alex Preddy, who was killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. In a statement, they said, "We are heartbroken. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the veterans he cared for as an ICU nurse. Our son was a good man." So the Preddys are mourning for their son. Blessed are those who mourn. I also thought of Rebecca Good, whose wife, Renee Good, was shot by ICE agents. Rebecca and Renee had just dropped off their 3 kids at school, and they drove back through a demonstration. They got involved, and as Renee was trying to drive away, she got shot 3 times and killed. And Rebecca, her wife, collapsed in grief on a neighbor's porch step. And Renee's family made a statement, "Renee was a beautiful light of our family and brought joy to anyone she met. She was relentlessly hopeful and optimistic, which was contagious. We already miss her more than words could ever express." Blessed are those who mourn. And when I read the gospel, blessed are the meek, what immediately came to my mind were the immigrants cowering behind closed doors and hoping they wouldn't be noticed, keeping their children home from school, trying to live underground so they wouldn't be deported. These are the people who work the jobs that no one else wants. Housekeepers, personal caregivers, construction workers, food service employees. They're willing to work hard for a better life. Blessed are the meek. Now, when I read in the gospel, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, I couldn't help but think of the people in Minneapolis who are standing out in the cold to protest injustice and standing up for the rights of immigrants. People of Minneapolis have blown whistles. They have warned immigrants of the presence of ICE officers. They've stood as a shield between ICE officers and the immigrants. They've offered shelter. They brought food. And they're doing this because of their belief in justice for all, for the right of due process. They've been tear gassed and pepper sprayed and arrested. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. It's right there. Sometimes the gospel is hard to understand and hard to apply, but today there's no question for me. God cares for the immigrants in our country just as much as he cares for us. And I think everyone wants to apprehend immigrants who are criminals, but ICE has been going about it in a way that is indiscriminate and cruel, rounding up people from work sites, breaking down doors, prowling through neighborhoods, purposely instilling fear. That's not right. In the Beatitudes, Jesus is pronouncing the way of God in contrast to the way of the world. The world says, blessed are the rich, blessed are the powerful, blessed are those who can get their way. But Jesus turns that upside down. And he says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Matthew says that Jesus taught the Beatitudes on the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus went up the mountain and the people came to him and he sat down and he began to teach them. And these people who gathered were poor peasants and farmers and artisans. They weren't the wealthy or the famous or the powerful. They were just regular people who wanted to learn from Jesus. Blessed are you when you are poor in spirit. Blessed are you when you mourn. Blessed are you who are meek. Blessed are you when you hunger and thirst for righteousness. And I think that when we are at our lowest place, when we're cut down by grief, when we feel attacked by our friends, or when we're let down by our family, that's when we seek out God. That's when we turn to God. When the systems are failing us, when the foundations are shaking, when everything we believe in seems to be crumbling, that's when we turn to God. The hopeful thing about the Beatitudes is that each one comes with a promise. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Even when we're depressed, God offers hope. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Even when we're grieving and sad, God offers us comfort. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. God promises that someday things will be different. Our next door neighbor is named Javier. He is from Mexico. He immigrated a long time ago. He has a green card. He works for the city of Bremerton in the city cemetery. He does maintenance and helps with the burials. And he's a valued employee. But he's worried that ICE could come and take him away and leave his wife and his children, and he wouldn't be able to get back. They're American citizens. So if ICE shows up in our neighborhood, Kitty and I are going to go up and block the driveway, make sure that he doesn't get taken. There is much that is wrong today, but there is also hope. Blessed are we who are hopeful, for our hopes may come true. In J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, there's a moment when one character, Haldir, reflects on a dangerous world. This is what he says. The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places. But still there is much that is fair. And though in all the lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows, perhaps, the greater. That's the hope of the Beatitudes.